Welcome into Gorilla Sports Off Court. I am your host for today, Liv Moods, and this is presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American's salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payments. So head to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you save some money today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome in, everybody, to another Gorilla Sports Off Court. I am your host for today, Liv Moods, and yes, I have recovered from my morning yesterday. Not morning period. Mourning. N-I-N-G. Yeah, I had to make sure I spelled that right. Yeah, obviously, it's always hard the day after your team is done playing. You've got games starting up tomorrow for the Timberwolves and OKC. You've got the Knicks versus the Pacers. And the basketball keeps on going. The world keeps on spinning, even if your team is no longer playing. And we're going to get into a little bit later what is next for Denver. Obviously, there's a lot of conversations about trading certain players, who stays, who goes. With a lack of consideration to the salary cap. There's not unlimited funds here that the Denver Nuggets can spend, and whose stock is up and whose stock is down. In a perfect world, you get rid of the players that haven't shown up and you add players that will, but that is not always as easy as 1, 2, 3. So we'll talk about what's next for the Denver Nuggets in just a moment. First, I want to start with a conversation that is being had across the basketball fandom. All over X, all over Instagram, all over TikTok, you name it, it's there. And that's this Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark situation, right? Last season, we saw a rivalry forming between these two players that actually was formed by fans. It really wasn't between these two players. They don't believe in Team Clark versus Team Reese. These are two competitors at the highest level that want to win, that are great at their sport, that are passionate about their sport. And so this fandom has created, a separation between two athletes that are both great at what they do, and deserve respect for what they do and what they bring to the table. And it's a very tough conversation to have, and I'm going to tell you why. Do I think that the hatred shown towards one or the other could be racism in hiding? Of course, that's life. The sad reality is racism hasn't gone anywhere. It's still very much alive. I can speak as a mixed woman that, I hear conversations from a lot of different people, even within my own family, within my own bloodline. And racism is far from a thing of the past. It really is. And so I understand that there is some misogynistic and racism underlying tendencies here in these conversations between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. Do I wish it didn't have to become a race war? Of course I wish that. I don't want that. I want this to just be two athletes that are great at what they do, and we give them the respect that they deserve. They're humans at the end of the day. However, the reality is that's not where we're at, and I think there are people that hide behind their fandom. And there are some microaggressions there. There is some racism that is beneath the fandom for either Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese. It does exist. And it would be foolish and ignorant of you to not acknowledge that. Absolutely. There have to be conversations that are uncomfortable when it comes to stuff like this, because racism is very much alive. Misogyny has not gone anywhere. It's still here. Women are CEOs of companies and entrepreneurs, and it doesn't matter. Misogyny is still going to be alive and well, as is racism. And I do know that there is that aspect there. I think what I'm struggling with right now is, for years and years and years and years, the WNBA has deserved more. They have wanted more. They have expressed they've wanted more in terms of equal pay. And I just hate that this is how the WNBA is being watched. It's being seen. I know a lot of people that don't know a thing about the WNBA, but they do know about Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and their feuding and their hatred towards one another. And that's all coming from the fans. The fans that watch this sport or are supposed to watch and love this sport and respect this sport are creating a divide between two athletes that, in my opinion, is giving a poor image to the WNBA. This is not what you want the WNBA to be watched for, is reality TV drama that is not really between the two players. A lot of the times, if the players don't care, we shouldn't either. It's really that simple. These are two competitors. We watch LeBron James talk trash with any person in the league. At the end of the day, they're competing. They're passionate. And sometimes that can come off, with a little bit of aggression. And the way in which a lot of fans have spun this to now be hatred, it feels like in a lot of people's stories, depending on which team you're on, which, by the way, you can be on both teams here. I know in this day and age, we don't like the middle ground, right? It's always pick a side. You can't be in the middle. Well, you should be able to be in the middle. Angel Reese is great for her own in her own way and what she brings to the sport, as is Caitlin Clark. I am very much a person that's in the middle. However, I am not a person that is going to ignore what I believe some fans are doing here, which is hiding behind a team Clark or Team Reese. And why are you hiding behind that? Is there a reason? Are there microaggressions? Are there certain feelings that you have that you're not willing to stand up and say with your chest? Because there are. I can tell by the tone of voice and some of the way people talk about this issue that it is much deeper than basketball. That's the reality. However, there is a world where you can be both Team Angel Reese and Team Caitlin Clark. I certainly am. I respect both of these players for what they bring to the WNBA and beyond, and the brands that they've built. I respect both of them. What I don't like is that the WNBA for years has been wanting to get more attention, but in turn, more respect and more money. And they should want those things. They shouldn't have to beg for it. Unfortunately, that's just the situation we're in here. But I don't want it to always be when Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark are going head to head, there has to be a villain in the story at all times. These are just competitors at the end of the day. They're playing basketball. They're playing a physical game of basketball. I hate how there always has to be a villain, right? I watched the play, the flagrant foul. Do I think there was an overreaction by Angel Reese? I do, actually. Yes, I do. Especially because as I watched the play a little bit more and I kept rewatching it, there was a two-hand shove by Angel Reese a second before Caitlin Clark got a flagrant foul. So this is the game. My whole point in saying that is not to now villainize Angel Reese. See, don't get it. Don't go there. That's the problem. There's no villain here. The villains are the fans that are creating such a divide between two players that are just competitors competing at the highest level. That's what this is. And so I don't understand why every time there is an interaction, a moment, passion, frustration, competitive drive in those moments, that there always has to be a villain. Do I think Angel Reese may have had an overreaction? Sure. But I know Nikola Jokic has overreactions all the time. I know LeBron James has overreactions all the time. So I don't know why, when it comes to these women, these athletes, that it has to be who's the villain in this story. That is what I'm struggling with. Now, like I said, the divide between these two and the fans that are on one side versus the other, and the way in which they speak about these athletes, you shouldn't have to hurl insults about Angel Reese to prove how much you love Caitlin Clark, and vice versa. You shouldn't have to hurl insults at Caitlin Clark to prove how much you like Angel Reese. That's the issue here. There doesn't need to be a villain in this story. These are two high-level competitors, point blank, period. The villains are the fans that are creating this narrative that, in my opinion, is exceptionally toxic. So, it's the sport. It's no different than any other sport at the highest level, right? When you're in it, when you're trying to win, when you're competing, there's emotions there. Always. There will always be emotions there. But when the game is done, these are two human beings that love their sport and I think have a lot of respect for one another. So we as fans can't forget that either in these moments. And there doesn't always need to be a villain in a story between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. And we'll leave it at that. But some of you out there, you're not slick. And I'll just say that. You're not slick in the way that you speak about Caitlin Clark or the way that you speak about Angel Reese. You're not slick. It's very loud what you're trying not to say. It's coming off very loud at the highest volume. So there is also that aspect as well. I'm not naive to that. I'm not ignoring that. It's a very real thing. And we do have to address those things, right? The WNBA released that they're going to look into some of the comments and things being said in the arena by fans. It's not okay. And those things do need to be addressed. But while they're being addressed, there is no sense in us as fans of the game to be creating a villain in this story at all times. If there's some rivalry, that's healthy, that's normal, that's sports. We don't create villains like this all the time in the NBA when there's a flagrant foul. Come on. It's not slick what you're doing out there. Relax. We don't need to be pinning these women against one another because at the end of the day, they're competitors. They respect one another. They know it's part of the game. Move on. If they don't care, why should we? Let it go. You don't need to fight Angel Reese's battles. You don't need to fight Caitlin Clark's battles. They both bring something separate to the table that makes them who they are, that makes them special, that deserves respect. Constantly pinning these women against one another is not going to bring the right attention to the WNBA that this group of athletes deserves. It's just not. So if you want these athletes to be respected more, paid more, watched more, talked about more, I don't think this is the way to do it. Creating villains in stories, pinning them against one another. It's not the way to do it. It's just not. Okay. I wanted to address that because that is obviously the talk of the town right now. It's all over my timeline and it felt wrong as a female in this space to not talk about it. And it's tough. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but guess what? Uncomfortable conversations are how we change what's going on. And so, constantly painting Angel Reese as a villain, and I see people on my timeline do it all the time. It's very irresponsible to do that, to villainize either one of these women when it comes to the sport that they play, when they're competitors. It's very irresponsible to make large claims like Angel Reese hates Caitlin Clark. It's a very irresponsible thing to do. Was there maybe an overreaction by Angel Reese? Yeah. Of course. I think you naturally have a little bit more passion and drive when you're up against another great player. You're trying to meet each other where you're at, right? It's fuel to your fire. But making claims that Angel Reese hates Caitlin Clark, that's irresponsible. It really is. We can go down the line of all the different times things have happened between these two and we can make our assumptions, but to get on a large platform and say that there's hate between these two individuals is irresponsible, especially when you know that the fans are already driving such vile and hateful narratives. It's an irresponsible claim to make with very little to back it up. So anyway, we'll move on and we'll talk about the NBA now. Shout out to the WNBA, but now we'll go on to the NBA. The conference finals are set. You've got OKC versus Minnesota, and you've got New York versus Indiana. Okay. Here's the deal. There is that piece of me that's torn between, do I root for the team that eliminated my team? Because if they go all the way, then it might hurt a little bit less. Or do I root against the team that knocked my team out? I've asked this question many times to sports fans, and I get a different answer every time, actually. I used to be the one that would root for the team that knocked my team out because it was like, all right, I'll feel a whole lot better if they go and win this whole dang thing. Because then it's like, okay, This was their year, right? It makes the elimination game feel a little less painful. I think I'm switching sides in this one, though. I think I'm rooting for Minnesota here in the West, and I'm rooting for the Knicks in the East. The beauty of not the positive, if we want to look at the positive as a Nuggets fan of not having the Nuggets playing anymore, is I really don't have a stake in this game. I really don't. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't care either way, truly. I was talking this morning about the Western Conference Finals specifically. Minnesota is a hot team right now. They just are. And something that Minnesota has that Denver does not. I actually got into a back and forth in the TikTok comment section with one of the OKC players' girlfriends, believe it or not. Yes. She got on my page and, was doing a little trash talk there. And she kind of implied, she basically said to me, like, you implying that your team is not, because I said, watch out for the Wolves, they're the real deal. And she said something about, you implying that your team is not the real deal is crazy, by the way. And I'm like, hold on, pause. We're not going to turn this into something that I did. First of all, that was not me implying I don't believe in the Denver Nuggets and or think the Denver Nuggets are the real deal. They are. But the reality of it is, I had to do a little schooling there. I don't think she realizes I do this for a living. I watch every single game. I said the reality is, though, the Denver Nuggets were exceptionally injured. Not an excuse, but it's the reality. So OKC is going to face a very different group that is healthy and deep. The Nuggets had 3 guys coming off of their bench. Again, I'm not excusing it. The Nuggets lost fair and square, period. But the reality is they are facing a very different group tomorrow in the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are healthy and deep. The edge that OKC had in the series against the Denver Nuggets, there were a few edges that they had, one of which was their bench. They were deeper than Denver. You don't get that huge advantage. There isn't that huge discrepancy when you're facing the Timberwolves because they're also deep. Their bench is also good to cook and give you 35. Naz Reid has entered the chat, ladies and gentlemen. So went back and forth with her a little bit. Again, she was trying to imply that I did not think the Nuggets were the real deal. And she's like, that's a crazy thing to do, by the way. And I'm like, hold up. Nobody said that the Nuggets were not the real deal. But what I am going to say is the Nuggets, where the Nuggets struggled against OKC, Minnesota will not struggle in that department. They won't. As good as this Nuggets offense was all stinking season long, they weren't a team that was living and dying by the three. They weren't reliable from the three-point line. They were good to hit some, for sure. I mean, we saw Aaron Gordon have some big moments there. CB in the last game hit some big shots. They're all good for some big shots from the three-point line, but it's not a consistent thing for Denver. They're shooting threes at a low caliber compared to everybody else because that's not the way they ran their offense all year. So Minnesota's going to give OKC different problems, if you will. Minnesota's got a lot of momentum right now. And there is just something about Anthony Edwards that I trust in a big moment. I really do. I believe OKC and Minnesota split in the regular season 2-2 between the two. Both of the wins for Minnesota, I believe, or maybe the losses, I'm not sure. 2 of those games did not have Julius Randle. He has added to this Minnesota Timberwolves team. He does have some experience there when it comes to a playoff spot, right? So Julius Randle enters the chat. I believe one of the losses that the Timberwolves had against OKC this season was without Rudy Gobert. We know Rudy Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year. We know what he's capable of defensively. I think he will disrupt this OKC team a little bit, which is what you anticipate. But that being said, OKC is a phenomenal basketball team. I would be lying if I didn't say that. Of course, they are very deep. They've got a lot of momentum right now as well in their favor. You know, the rest versus rust thing. OKC, not as much rest as the Timberwolves, but will we see the Timberwolves come out in game 1 a little rusty? It's very, very likely that we see that. So I think there's a 50-50 thing here going on. I don't think it's fair for anyone to make the claim again that this is going to be easy money for OKC. I really don't. I really, really don't. Because I think Minnesota is great. I think Minnesota's a really, really solid basketball team. OKC, you could look at the two teams, right? OKC has beaten versus the two teams that the Timberwolves have beaten. The Timberwolves faced a Lakers team, no center. That was a big part of them losing. But then you also had a pretty broken, an aging Golden State team. So you could argue that OKC has seen a little bit more in this postseason to be prepared for a team like Minnesota. But I don't know. Again, I just think that it's going to go either way. I think it's going to go either way. I just don't think it's going to be easy for either team. Any person that's claiming it's going to be easy for OKC, I think is forgetting who this Timberwolves team is. So it'll be interesting. I do think it'll be a very fun series nonetheless. And out east, I have to be fully transparent with you. I don't really have a prediction in the East because I was really wrong about the East. I did not think this was going to be the Eastern Conference Finals. I really didn't. So I really don't want to speak on the Eastern Conference because I haven't given it a fair shot. I was really, really wrong about Indiana, and I'm admitting that now. I was really wrong about New York as well. And so I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. I think I'll be rooting for New York a little bit. For no particular reason besides I really like Jalen Brunson a lot. I saw what he was able to do last postseason all by his lonesome. And I was pretty crushed to see that end for him because he was doing such an amazing job that would love to see him get rewarded this year, right? I think the last time the New York Knicks won a title was like in 1973, was it? Something like that, long time ago. For these other teams, it's never happened before. Either way, you're going to get Jalen Brunson, Halliburton, just to name the stars, Anthony Edwards or SGA winning their first ring. You really can't go wrong, right? I mean, I think this is just a beautiful finals that we'll get regardless of who makes it past the conference finals. Let's see what you guys have to say. Let's see. Let's go back to the Nuggets. Gordon asking for 2 days rest between games in the playoffs is ridiculous. Get in the pool and get in shape. Now, I get it, right? I get the idea that these players are making millions and this is just a part of their job. And so much of the exhaustion in the postseason and the injuries and whatever could be a result of not conditioning the right way and needing to condition differently and or better. I get it. But I do think the NBA schedule is a little whack. There was a lot of back-to-back games in the regular season. I think some of that's a little avoidable. Again, I get it. They make millions. They should be good to go no matter what. This is their job after all. I get it. But when you do watch these star players going down with injuries, and so many of them in this postseason run, it does make you wonder if the wear and tear on their bodies is going to turn into a postseason that the healthiest team wins. That's no fun. I get it. It's just part of it. It's that way in every major sport, right? Health matters. There's a lot of things that have to go right in order to win a championship. I get it. However, you hate to see these stars going down because it does change how things play out. And I know it's just part of the game, but if there's a way that you can give these guys a little bit more rest. Now, I'm not saying I agree with AG and that you should get 2 days in between games. That's not what I'm saying. But if there's a way that you can make a little bit more sense. There were some back-to-backs just for the Nuggets specifically, and I'm not using them as an example for any other reason outside of I know their schedule because I watched every game. There were quite a few back-to-backs for them, very weird travel days. There was one series in the postseason that got like 3 days of rest and everybody else got one. It just didn't make sense. The NBA scheduling this year hasn't always made sense. But again, I'm not saying that they need They need 2 days of rest. I also think part of Aaron Gordon saying, hey, we need more rest in between games. You may not need as much rest in between games if you had a deeper roster. And that's the reality of it, too. I think the Nuggets feel super, super tired. And so much of their exhaustion is, yes, just injured bodies and the postseason and two series that are going, all the way to game 7, all of that, yes. But there's also the aspect of this Nuggets team doesn't have depth, so our starters had to play way more than other teams. So some of that's just an issue that Denver needs to address as well. You got to get some help for your starting 5. Their bodies cannot handle playing 40 plus minutes almost every single night that they play basketball. So some of this is also just a Denver issue where they've got to address the depth situation so that their bodies can rest a little bit more, right? What's next for Denver, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I did see a report today. Let me try to find it so that I am not misspeaking here. Let me see here. There was a report about David Adelman, and it was basically just saying that he is a very strong candidate to be promoted to head coach permanently. I would love to know your guys' thoughts on that. I personally think so, because I think, yes, there's probably things that Coach Adelman can work on that every Nuggets fan will say, oh, he needs to be better about this, that, whatever. So much of why I respect David Adelman is to be able to make it as far as this Nuggets team did, given injuries, given a coaching change with 3 regular season games left, no GM. There's a lot, or a GM being fired, your original GM being fired. There were a lot of changes made in a very quick time period. This Denver Nuggets team has been kind of thrown, some curveballs throughout the season. I think the reason that David Adelman deserves some strong consideration for the head coach role is he did a great job with what he was given. And what he was given wasn't super great in terms of where their bodies were at, and also the team that was built by Calvin Booth. I really think this Nuggets team paid the price for decisions that Calvin Booth made. And there is concern for me that some of those are irreversible. Some of the mistakes that Calvin Booth made in his time with Denver, to me, are irreversible. So you gave David Adelman this team and basically said, do with it what you will. And he exceeded expectations majorly. But that's also with a team that a lot of people did not have faith in to get the job done. I think some decisions that were made by Calvin Booth are truly setting the Nuggets up for failure in a lot of ways, and I'm not sure how you handle that. What I will say to you in the offseason is the Denver Nuggets need to prioritize one thing, and that is keeping Christian Braun, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic in Denver. By the way, CB's stock is up. CB needs to get paid. He's going to want to get paid. Can he get paid here? Trade MPJ. Okay. Is his stock up? Not really. Are there teams out there that are going to be fighting for Michael Porter Jr.? I can't confidently say yes. So the offseason for the Denver Nuggets is going to be interesting, because as much as it's let's figure out what we need, it's let's figure out what we can even get. Either by trading what we've got, or can we keep CB here? Can we afford to keep CB here? What do you do with Russell Westbrook in his 18th season? There's a lot going on here. I think I would really put your focus, if I'm the Denver Nuggets, I'm putting my focus around, for sure, Aaron Gordon and Nikola Jokic, and building around those two guys. But certainly do your best to keep Christian Braun. So the lack of depth is something that in the offseason the Denver Nuggets need to handle. They must. It is not an option. Do you get Bruce Brown back? Do you bring him back to Denver? We know he loves it here. I don't know. CB's going to want to get paid, though, and he deserves it. Absolutely. His stock is all the way up, and it should be. and it absolutely should be. Yeah, getting Zeke's contract out of the way, that needs to be a priority. Saric is another one to me. And then, as hard as it is for me to say it, Michael Porter Jr. as well. I just think the Nuggets have outgrown Michael Porter Jr. That's the most respectful way that I can say it. The Cavs, interesting. Yeah, I just think that this relationship between the Denver Nuggets and Michael Porter Jr. no longer works. That's the most respectful way I can put it. It no longer works. So I don't know what they do about that. I don't know if there's an answer for Michael Porter Jr., but I just don't think you can go another season with Nikola Jokic playing at the level that he's playing at, with the frustrations that Nikola Jokic has felt. I don't think you can go another season crossing your fingers that Michael Porter Jr. shows up for this team. You've now seen it over the course of 2 seasons where he's been very inconsistent. I think you have to go off of what you've seen as of late. And what you've seen has been inconsistent. So it's tough. That being said, I will say my prediction is the Timberwolves in the West and the Knicks in the East. Is that as much of a prediction as it is manifestation? Probably more manifestation, but that's how I feel. And that's the beauty of not having a dog in this fight anymore, is I can just watch good basketball, and either way, it really doesn't affect me. It really, really doesn't. I will continue to lick my wounds as a Denver Nuggets fan, but really, I'm pretty over it. At this point, I'm just excited to see what this team does in the offseason and how they set themselves up better for success. I think in many, 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 many different ways, this season was very eye-opening for the franchise as a whole. So I think what they do in the offseason is going to be very telling, but would really love to see them make some big changes. I think it's time for a rejuvenated, revamped version of the Denver Nuggets. And I think in order to do that, you're going to have to let go of that 2023 championship core that still remains. I said what I said. And I'm sorry to say what I said, but it's the truth. I think you're going to have to start playing chess with guys that you never imagined being anywhere else, but you need to start imagining it. Because in order for this team to get back on track and be a contender, whether it's next season or in 5 years from now, you've got to be willing to let go of some of those champions. You got to free yourself from contracts that just no longer make sense. And you kind of have to hit refresh a little. So if the Nuggets can do that, I feel confident. If they can't, well, you know the rest. Signing off for now, you guys. I'm Liv Moods. This has been another Guerrilla Sports Off Court presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants are designed to help you save some money, getting you a better interest rate, lowering your monthly payments. Head to trustedamerican.com to see if they can help you save some money today. I'm Liv Moods. I'm getting out of here, but we'll see you Thursday for another Off Court show. The following week, you guys, I am going on vacation with my family now that the Nuggets season is done. So I personally won't be in the studio filming next week, but you'll get an off-court show today. And then, of course, you'll get some shows from me on Thursday as well. So Thursday, 12:30 p.m. Mountain Time, another off-court episode for you. And we'll catch you then. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Go Nuggets, and we'll see you Thursday.